So I vividly remember one of my toughest nights that I faced during my mountaineering career. This was May 22nd, 2019, and we were climbing from Camp 2 to Camp 3 on the northern side of Mount Everest. And I faced some really technical terrain, really some steep climbing, and finally, after about 7-8 hours of climbing, I could see a hint of Camp 3 at 27,200 feet. This is the tallest campsite on planet Earth, right inside the death zone. And as soon as I reached my camp, I could kind of see that the camp was at a slanted angle, at a 30-degree slanted angle. It was quite a shock to me. It was super cold. It had already started snowing, and I was tired. I was miserable. And then our campsite was at 30-degree angle. But to be very frank, it was an absolute luxury at 27,000 feet. So I quickly went inside the camp and I kind of went inside the sleeping bag and I got myself cozy. But it was very cold and there was this thin layer of snow that had gotten over my camp. And really, at 27,000 feet, no one sleeps. No one gets any sleep and there's no appetite as well. So it's not as if I was enjoying myself. I was tossing and turning all the time, and there was a lot of anxiety as I was going to start climbing towards the summit of Mount Everest, one of the biggest days of my life. And so it was quite a tricky night to pass by. But this is how life at 27,000 feet is. You have to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. And at about 9:30 that evening, both Mingma Tenzi Sherpa, my Sherpa guide, and me, both of us started getting ready. It takes sometimes 15 to 20 to 25 minutes to just do the most basic mundane tasks like just tying my laces or putting my specialized mountaineering boots. Tasks that would not take 2 to 3 minutes down at the sea level. Your brain is simply not functioning and you simply do not have any energy to do even these most basic tasks. And so we kind of started getting ready, and at about 9:45 both Mingma and I started the final journey towards the top of Everest. And I still remember some of the first steps as we started kind of moving. We saw this long line of climbers behind us, almost as if a traffic jam was going to build up very soon. So Mingma and I decided that we are going to walk a little faster and try and kind of make a lot of gap between us and the climbers behind us. And so we walked through the first 4 hours of the night, and I remember finally getting to the top of Northeast Ridge. Then the terrain kind of became slightly easier compared to what I had been facing till now. And then finally, one of the biggest shocks hit me. As I started walking, and I kind of took my headlamp on one side, and I could see a dead body right in front of me. The dead body was completely disfigured. The face was turned around, the hands were broken, the back was broken, probably a very old dead body, and that had taken a lot of tumbles across the mountain before finding its resting spot. And this is the reality of big mountain climbing. I stopped Mingma and I told Mingma, if I make any mistakes here, this is where I would be lying for the rest of my life as well. So let's stay focused. Let's keep walking, let's keep climbing, and let's get to the top of Everest. So for the next few minutes and hours, we kept climbing, and we passed through some of the trickier terrain that Everest on the northern side has to offer. And we were at the base of this massive, giant rock wall called the second step. There were a few people who had left before us. At the second step, they were kind of ahead of us and they were causing a big traffic jam. So when I was kind of waiting at the second step, it was kind of running through my mind that I'm running through oxygen. I'm getting colder and colder in my fingers and in my toes. There's a massive traffic jam at second step. Should I wait? Should I go home? Should I request them to let me pass because I'm stronger than them? There were a lot of emotions kind of going through, but quickly the traffic jam situation resolved and we were able to cross them. Finally, I was on top of the second step and we started walking. When I actually came back down second step, I knew the kind of terrifying terrain that we had climbed through, which is one of the big reasons why we climb through the night, is that we have absolutely no clue what we are climbing through. So sometimes something that you don't fear, it is so easy to kind of overcome those things. And of course, the terrain in the night is a lot more stable and the temperatures are a lot more stable. Chances of getting a storm in the night are a lot lesser than getting a storm during the day, which is one of the big reasons why we climb through the night, mostly in big mountains, is to kind of mitigate a lot of our risk. So after passing the second step, we walked for about an hour or so before running into the third step. And third step was slightly less technical compared to second step, and we crossed over the third step and we finally were at the base of what is known as the summit snow pyramid. Now this is a tricky section of about 25 to 30 minutes of steep snow climbing that one needs to do at almost 28,200 or 300 feet. And as soon as Mingma and me reached at the base, we could see this guy like sitting there on the top of the snow pyramid. And we started kind of our climb. We climbed for 5 minutes and that light did not move. We climbed for the next 10 minutes and the light was still stationary. As we started approaching that person, we quickly realized that that person may actually be in some sort of trouble. So we increased our pace. We finally caught up to that person and that person was sitting right there. We tried asking the person some of the most simplest questions possible, like what is your name, what is going on, and that person had absolutely zero clue of what was happening. They didn't even realize that they were climbing Everest or that they were on Everest. They were hallucinating, and this was a Sherpa guide of a different team. Luckily, Mingma was with me and we were able to together work with this Sherpa guide to understand what this person's problem was. And so we first checked the oxygen mask, we checked the oxygen regulator, we checked the oxygen system overall. And after running through a few steps, Mingma realized that this person's oxygen had run out and had run out probably a long while ago. And this person was an inexperienced person and they didn't know how to change their oxygen, or they potentially didn't realize that their oxygen was over and they continued climbing until they got into trouble. And this person was almost going to die. Both Mingma and I were there and we almost felt as if we leave him, if we don't help this person, this guy was going to die, 100%. And luckily we looked into his day pack. Into his day pack, there were 3 or 4 bottles of oxygen. So we realized that this was potentially a Sherpa assistant guide who was carrying oxygen for some of his other team members. So we changed his oxygen bottle, we pump up the gas, and after about 5 minutes, he was able to make coherent sentences, and that's when he was on his way. He thanked us. He thanked Mingma actually, because it was Mingma who helped him out. And another massive reminder to me that if I made any mistake on Everest, Everest was not going to forgive that mistake. It's not like I'm animating Everest and giving human characteristics to Everest, but mistakes on Everest can be lethal, can be fatal, can kill you. And that happens every single year. I did not want to be a statistic in any newspaper. So I again reminded Mingma, there is about last 1 to 1.5 hours to go. Let's stay focused. Let's just put one step in front of another, remove all the distractions out of our life, and just get to the top. For the next 1.5 hour, as the first light of dawn hit, we could see this massive triangular shadow of Everest as if it was covering the entire planet. It was an absolutely spectacular spectacular scene, something that every mountaineer dreams of seeing, the shadow of Everest falling on the world. And we kind of took a moment to soak in that scene. We kind of took in that moment to enjoy that scene, and we kind of kept walking. At about 5:30 in the morning, Mingma and I both were standing on the very top of the world. And the very first thing I did was I tightly hugged Mingma. I shook his hands and I expressed my sincere most gratitude to him. Without him, I would have never made it to the top of Mount Everest. And then I kind of took it easy for a bit. I wanted to spend 5 to 10 minutes on top of Everest and just kind of soak in the beauty, kind of soak in the amazing view that one gets from the top of Everest, but also express my gratitude to the mountain for allowing me to get to the top and spend some time on the top. And that's something that I did. And then I remembered the wise words of the legendary American mountaineer Ed Viesturs. Getting to the top is optional, but getting back down alive in one piece is mandatory. That is something that runs through my mind all the time as I make such climbs in the last 10 years, in the last 12 years. So my next focus was getting back down safely, and that's what I kind of started focusing on. Step by step, both Mingma and I finally got back at Camp 3. And both of us went inside the tent as Mingma kind of started the stove and started boiling some hot water and making some soup for me. But at these altitudes, making water itself is a task. First, one has to dig some snow, one has to dig some ice, and it just takes 45 minutes to convert that ice into just enough water that we could both get half a bowl of soup each. Mingma made that soup and he gave it to me, and I drank the soup. Those bits of warm water going through my system were almost like heaven. And in that moment, tears started rolling down my eyes. I don't know what happened, but I completely went emotional, and I started crying loudly. And the first thing I told Mingma is, if you were not there, I would have never been able to achieve this dream of my life. So a big thank you to you. And Mingma again hugged me. And it was also then I pondered on this quintessential question that is asked to us all mountaineers. Why do you climb these mountains? Why climb mountains anyway? Why put yourself through so much misery, suffering, near-death experiences, hunger? Why do all this? And yes, mountaineering is a big passion of mine. And yes, to some mountaineering is about the thrill, to some mountaineering is about adventure, to some mountaineering is about fame and glory. But none of those things matter to me. To me, it is about these amazing camaraderie and the brotherhood that I share with Mingma. And the way he challenges me, the way he inspires me every single time to come in the top shape of my life, not just physically, but even mentally. Or for example, the life-changing experiences that I have had while climbing these mountains. Or also, for that matter, the amount of emotions sometimes that I experience on these mountains. Sometimes emotions of fear, emotions of death, emotions of all chaos and panic. But then emotion of getting or becoming one with the mountain itself. Putting that one step after another, existing in that microsecond of the moment, being able to thoroughly enjoy life, being able to feel alive. It is a deep inner calling for why I climb mountains. And believe me, when I found my Everest, it gave me that focus and that drive and that passion to go on a journey to relentlessly pursue the Everest. And so today I want to prod each one of you. If you don't have an Everest in your life, take a step back. Find your Everest. I truly believe that you will find the same passion and drive that I found when I went on this journey. But in addition, I also found that through mountaineering, that through these life experiences, I find my Miraki also. This is what my Everest is. This is what life means to me. Mountains is my life. Living and becoming one with mountains is where I found my Miraki.